Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Anderson Lecture Series, our second series. My name is Beatrice Opokwa Atenka, and I'm currently the John Muller Anderson Assistant Teaching Professor in the School of Visual Arts. In this capacity, I coordinate the programming of Anderson Lecture Series along with the events and award committee members, so past and present. This space has been generously given to us by the Patti Paterno Library, which is being spearheaded and watched over by Lauren Davis, who is not here at the moment, but she is. And I would like to thank her for helping us coordinate this space, and we are all feeling comfortable, I believe. So thank you all for joining us for the talk today. I'd like to give a brief history of what the Anderson Lecture Series is all about. Dr. John Muller Anderson, Professor Emeritus, was the Ivan Pooh Research Professor of Philosophy and the first director of Penn State Institute of Arts and Humanities. His passion for the philosophy of art and painting resulted in his generous gift from which we are all benefiting from today. The John Muller Anderson Endowment in Visual Arts was established in 2001 with the purpose of supporting outstanding programming, such as this lecture series, and other related activities with guest artists that we bring onto our campuses to interact with our students and community. All Anderson events are free, so make sure the next time you come with another person, a plus one. I would like to thank the former director of the School of Visual Arts because he helped with this special series, Wagner Mendoka Whitehead, and the interim director, Eduardo Navas, sitting at the back, and my SOVA colleagues, in the Events and Award Committee, who have and they continue to greatly contribute to the smooth, successful carrying out of this series. Today, our artist for today is Eugene Agyei. But before I call Eugene to the podium, I'd like to introduce him so we have a fair idea of who he is. Eugene Agyei is a Ghanaian-born artist and educator based in the United States whose interdisciplinary practice explores themes of migration, identity, cultural hybridity, and the concept of home through ceramics, textiles, wood, found materials, and performance. He holds a BA in Industrial Art from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana and an MFA in Ceramics from the University of Florida. His works have appeared in group exhibitions across the United States at the American Museum of Ceramic Art, the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia, Han Museum of Art, Museum of Art Deland, Art and History Museum of Maitland, and the Utah Museum of Contemporary Art, among others. Solo shows have taken him to Rollins Museum of Art in Florida, North Dakota State University, and Valley City State University. Agyei had his first international solo museum exhibition opened at the Munich, Germany museum called the Day New Sammlung, and that is the Design Museum in Munich. And also as part of the Duke Franz von Bayern collection. So it was a whole collection that kind of like helped with the exhibition. Personally, I met Eugene during my undergrad studies in Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, KNUST in Ghana. A young aspiring scientist who could think of nothing but money and how to be the breadwinner of his family. Art he despised, especially painting the color wheel. But I watched a matured mind break barrier internationally beyond his interest. And it is for this reason we are all gathered here today to learn, engage, and sift through his interdisciplinary practice. Eugene is an assistant professor of art in ceramic and sculpture at Knox College in Illinois. And his current solo exhibition is on view at Alfred Ceramic Art Museum in Alfred, New York. So at this point, I would like to invite Eugene Agyei with an applause. I would like us all to welcome Eugene Agyei to this podium. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Beatrice, for the nice introduction. I didn't see that coming, especially with the personal staff back in college in Ghana. Thank you everyone for showing up. It's really snowing out there, very cold. I'm from Ghana, so I came all the way from Ghana to Florida. And in Ghana, it's really hot. Florida is humid, like so much hot. And so 4 years in Florida, then I moved to Alfred, New York. And that was my first time driving in snow. And I have to buy raincoat and boots. So I can imagine how it is. I'm still kind of like adapting to this weather. So I want to say thank you so much for showing up for this talk. And it's been wonderful to be here and grateful for this invitation. I have few friends, I got to reconnect with a few friends last night. I met Chanel last night, which is also great. We had really great conversation. And I got to know her 4 years ago, and she used to tell me, you can do it. Keep going. You're already doing it. And it always feels great to have, people like that across distance. And that's something that I always like, especially with this kind of visiting artist series where students get to meet different artists and get to connect with them, because we all need people from distance, especially mentorship. So I think it was really blessing to reconnect, because she reminded me, like, do you remember when we met? And I said, yes, I do. And also shout out to Wes. My mentor says hi. I think she knows you a lot. And she told me, oh, are you in Penn State? I know Wes, so kindly make sure you extend my regards to her. So I just wanted to let you know. And thank you once again, Beatrice. So usually when I'm doing a talk, and I feel so sad that I wasn't able to meet the MFA students, because I was really looking forward to have thoughtful conversation and also inspire them and let them know that they can make it as a student, because you don't have to wait after school to become an artist. It starts now. So that's what I was looking for. Because when I was in grad school, people told me that you cannot do it. Like, fame comes and go, especially after TV show. But what I said to myself was, I enjoy what I'm doing. And the moment you find that happiness in what you do, it's easy to become who you want to be. So for me, that was what I wanted to, share with the students and talk to them about how I'm navigating through this space. Not just the art, not just the ceramic world, but the art world itself, because the art world is really big and huge. Okay. Usually when I'm doing an artist talk, I talk a lot, but I also forget so many. So what I want you to do is that after the talk, please, you're welcome to ask me any question. It could be about my work. Maybe I forget about specific color. Just ask me. And I'm just going to talk about that because I love talking about art. Okay. So I make sculptures, installation, and performance to explore themes around migration, identity, and the concept of home, which is belonging. And I'm particularly interested in expanding the language of material. And in my work, I use clay, textiles, and found objects. And these are some of the materials that I'm always interested in transforming and also expanding the meaning in my work. It is interesting how these materials and even the objects can carry memory, emotions, and also meanings. To delve into how I started and where I am right now, I would like to reintroduce myself. So I'm Eugene Agyei, always an artist first, an educator, a messenger, and also a traveler, born and raised in Ghana. So I want to start by showing you where it all began and a few experiments that shaped my practice now. So this image shows my studio during my college time in Ghana, which is Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And one important part of this experience was processing our own clay. Because I started off using clay before trying every material that I use in my work. And through that process, I began to understand the history of material, where this material come from and how far the clay has traveled before reaching my hand. So when you look at the first picture, which is the clay pit, very popular at Kane University, where I started from. And we at Kane University, what we did was we processed our own clay. So we dig the clay from the pit, which is the site. And I know here in the US, we also process our own clay. But for us, we dig the clay from the pit, from the site, and then place it there, which is the pit. And when we're about to make the piece, what we do is we have to go to the pit, dig the clay, and then take it back to the working space or the working area. And what we do is that we process the clay with our hand. And I remember when I came to the US my first time in my studio, my colleague asked me, where are your tools? Because I went to her studio and she has everything. And I just show her my hand because I come from a place where we were making everything with our hand. And it was so good because you get to see yourself in the material. You get to immerse yourself with the material and understand the material that you're working with. And another interesting thing about the education system in Ghana is we are being trained formally it's always about the technicality of your piece. And the critique system is really brutal, where the professor will come to the space where we all display the pieces. And the critique normally I don't know what they do right now, but back then we do the critique using the greenware or sometimes the bone dry pieces. And what the professor will do, he will come around, observe all the pieces, and the best pieces will end up being fired. Why? Because back then we had just one kiln, and priority were given to the seniors and also the graduate students. So freshman, sophomore, we have to go through that process where you need to make sure that your work meet that standard in order for it to be fired. And the rest will go back to the pit. But that experience, made me thought about what I can do with this limitation and how far can I push myself in the studio. So in my work, I'm being influenced by personal and collective experience. And in 2014, I made this piece. And I made this piece before when I went to the bank to pay my fees. Because in Ghana, we pay our fees at the bank. And when I paid my fees, the cashier saw what I'm studying in school and she said, oh, so your mom is paying all this money for you to study there. That was really heartbreaking. Because in Ghana, when we think about art, we only think about or fine art or contemporary art is always about painting and sculpture. And clay is always about craft or utilitarian pieces, which is pots or pottery. So when she said that, I just looked at her and I was like, I'm just enjoying what I'm doing and I'm just gonna keep going that. So when I came back to my studio, I started thinking outside the box and being curious about how can I push my form and what else can I do? And in my practice, because I know in clay, we always think about the technicality or the skills. I enjoy the skills and I apply them in my work and even I teach my students. But for me, in my work, I prefer that my work is being known by the idea and the story behind it instead of the techniques. So when I came to my studio, I started exploring and experimenting with glaze. And I questioned myself, what is the glaze doing in my work? So in my work too, I'm also curious about the idea, which is the Eurocentric idea of ceramics, where ceramics should always go with glazes. But for me, I question myself, what is the glaze doing in my work? So I made this piece and I started experimenting with surface. And I realized that what I was doing wasn't working for me, even though I was enjoying the form and moving outside the box, which is doing something different that I was taught in class. So like I said, so one day this moment happened. So I was just eating the candy, thinking about ways and means to push my work and also to think outside the box and what else can clay do in my work. So one day I was eating this candy and the candy fell on the ground. And over time, it collected the marks, the dirt from its surrounding. So I picked it up, and that small and unintentional transformation made me think about clay. And I immediately questioned myself, what if I combine, clay with other material to explore my idea? So those early moments in my studio were never about a finished object. They were about curiosity, mistakes, and discovery. And that curiosity became the foundation for my ongoing experimentation and also exploration in my work. So that unintentional moment inspired that piece, and I began bringing other materials into the conversation with clay. And one of the first material that I experimented with back then was gravels, and as you can see in the image. And this experimentation expanded my understanding of what clay could carry and also communicate. So through that process, I moved beyond, traditional vessel, and even what is traditional vessel. So in my work, I'm also interested in exploring the boundaries and also blurring the lines between ceramics and sculpture, um, and also tradition and innovation. So from that earliest encounters of clay, I realized that as I shaped materials, I was also shaping myself. And that makes me think about my favorite philosopher from Frantz Fanon, because whenever I'm pronouncing that, I have to take my time. And he said, the world through which I travel, I am endlessly creating myself. And I thought that was really powerful quote. And my work continued to reflect on this ongoing transformation where material exploration becomes a way of thinking through identity, movement, memory, and change. Why clay? And I get this question a lot because when you see my work, there's so many things going on, and I just want to walk you through my process. And the question that I always get is, how do you decide on this material and what role do they play in relation to the idea that you're trying to explore? So why clay? Growing up as a child, my relationship with clay came from these Akan women from my community. And they make everything out of hand using quail building techniques. And what they do is that when they dig the clay, the men will dig the clay and they will process the clay, and the women will rather come and make the pot. And for me, I learned that through observation. And what they do is that it's more like a generational apprenticeship where they train their kids for them to take over whenever they are no more there. So I studied them growing up. And at some point when I decided to use clay, I visited them and I talked to them about the process. And what they do is that they make this refined part for utilitarian purpose and also sometimes for rituals. And they finish them with sometimes with laterite or sometimes also with black ozite. And why do I use them in my work? So I got this question a lot about these are women and you're a man or a male using the same technique in your work? And I said, my relationship with them is I saw them doing that and I learned through the process of observation. So when I moved to the US, I started using the same technique to push the boundaries of clay by exploring forms, structure, texture, composition to express the resilience and also the adaptability of culture in the diaspora. I begin with clay because it comes from earth. I, I eat from clay. I touch clay. Clay keeps records of my emotion and it reminds me of home. Its malleability mirrors the negotiation of identity in the diaspora. So that's me, my studio. And in my work, I often use red clay or earthenware clay, evoking both earth and the red brick of home from my community in Ghana, which is a Akan community. And I use so many tools in my studio, and these are some of the tools. But that one thing that people don't really think about is the special tools that we use in our studio. And for me personally, I use tools such as survivor, tools such as resilience, because these are some of the tools that come together with the physical tools to make the forms that we want to make in our studio. And I thought I should highlight that. Through the exploration of materials, I ended up started using combining batik fabric. And batik fabric is a material deeply embedded in West African culture. And this discovery led to what I do now, which is my combination with textiles and other materials in my work. Why fabric? So I basically source my fabric from Accra Makola Market, which is the batik fabric, in collaboration with my mom. And I got this question a lot. Why don't you make your own fabric and you rather ship them? And that's what I'm going to talk about here. So growing up, I call this fabric as an African fabric. My mom used it to wrap me when I was growing up. I grew up using the same fabric. And even Friday, in Ghana, we have something called Ghana Made Friday, which is we all put on African-based prints, especially in a Akan community. That's what we were. So I grew up calling it fabric until when I started researching and understanding the history of the material. And then I realized that the material that I grew up calling it African fabric was not even an African fabric, which is, it has this complex history. Originated from Indonesia, then moved to Netherlands, then gained market in Ghana. And for me, I think that was really interesting to me. So thinking about the history of the fabric and how far this material has traveled, I use that tension or even the history as a metaphor to explore what it means to be in between, what it means to travel, and also the politics of identity in my work. So in my work, what I do is I cut this fabric and lay it in collage to reflect the cultural exchange and the diasporic displacement, and I hybrided it in my work. And I want to show this video. So this is a video call with my mom, and we normally talk on WhatsApp. And what she was doing, that was me 3 a.m. and it was around like noon in Ghana. And she called me, it's time for us to get fabric from the market. So what she was doing, she was helping me to select fabric from the Makola market. So she will pick the fabric and just read the name of the fabric and also feel the texture of it because I'm not there to do that. So she was just helping me to do it, and she would just read the name or call the name to me and show the colors and the patterns and feel the texture and tell me, oh, this is original, this is not original, this is fake. Yeah, she looks so happy. So I'm just going to talk through it. So it was kind of like a small but powerful gesture of care and connection. So this cause bring my new environment and my Ghanaian roots, keeping me grounded in language, culture, and home. So that the negotiation between my mom and the seller, which is the market women, and with me becomes like a metaphor for negotiating the self in the new space. I am fascinated by how time shapes space and how these small daily interaction carry meanings across distance. Now with that, so again, the discovery led to different series. So that I'm just gonna walk you guys through that series. So in 2021, I made the beauty series, and I made like 3 of them, and I'm just gonna go through that. But for me, the beauty was not just a surface quality, but also the critical framework of what I do. And I was interested in the tension between the soft and hard, fragile and structure to reflect the instability and resilience of the diasporic experience. Beauty became a form of resistance as a way to reclaim power because I made this piece during the pandemic. It was still kind of like winning down, and I think that was only the moment for me to reclaim power. And this work is part of the Duke of Bavaria Contemporary Art Collection and also shown um, in the Design Museum in Germany as part of the solo show. I also made this Born series. And I made this Born series because when I moved to Florida, I live in the same area for 4 years, and people would see me and then pass by. And in Ghana, when we say family, family is not just um, your mom and dad or your sibling, but it's the community. So I made this piece kind of to explore the relationship and also the invisible thread that connect people and identity. And when I made this piece, I was thinking about also Gaston Bachelor idea of space and how space shape our imagination. So in Born, what I wanted the piece to do was to allow the viewer to, to move or also have to experience the piece in a way to reflect the emotional and also the social ties that connect us. So I made this piece also in 2021. And one thing I always think about, because I made this piece in school, and even my thesis show is not making the waves that I wanted it to do. I made this piece when I was a student back in Florida. And one thing that I always tell, people or even students is that every semester should be your thesis show. You don't have to spend time, because I realized that back in school, my colleagues will just spend time and make just tiny pieces, not tiny pieces, but make anything, but rather put so much time during their final thesis show. But for me, when I was in school, every semester was like a thesis show for me, because I didn't know what piece is going to make way for me after school. So the pieces that I made when I was a student, though my thesis show is doing it, but I feel like my show, the pieces that I made as a student, started making wave whilst I was in school as well. So in 2022, I made the In the Meantime piece to capture the suspense motion of the swing. And growing up, we used to have this swing game. And when I moved up here, I realized that it's kind of something that people always do. So with this piece, I began to expand beyond the objects. I became interested in not just only making a form, but also shaping environment or space. So for me, the space itself started to function as a material, something that could hold tension, memory, and movement. So with this piece, as a viewer, move through the erratic strands of colorful yarn, their body activate the piece. And I was also really interested in the physicality of the viewer within the piece, where the viewer also become part of the work. So while they move across these pieces, I wanted to evoke the uncertainty and also the vulnerability that often accompany with the experience of crossing borders in the space. And I also wanted to explore, different possibilities and how different ways sculpture or ceramic can exist in the space. So going back to also 2021 again, I made this piece that I will show inspired by the Ghana Must Go. And I'm sure many of you have also heard it, but I'm still going to talk about it. So in the 1980s, I wasn't born then, but many undocumented Ghanaians was forced. They were packed or forced out of the country called Nigeria, which is also another West African country um, in Africa. And the Ghana Must Go came when they were asked to, leave the country because they felt like people were taking up their, again, women and also like opportunities in the country. And these people flew all the way to Nigeria to find a better home or a place. And then they were asked to come back. So that piece inspired my installation titled The Complex Journey. And I made this piece in 2021 at my residency called, this residency is Watershed Residency with a Zenobia Award. And this show, I showed this piece at Connecticut. It was kind of a solo show at Connecticut with my gallery. And when I displayed this piece, I was interested in the human interaction with the piece. And I made this piece using clay because clay is fragile. And I wanted the viewer to move through the space And while they were moving through the space, they were so scared to kick the piece because clay is fragile, and they were scared to break those pieces. But that was the goal. And what I told them was that I'm interested in the body language in the space, though the space is being immersive, but I also wanted the viewer to, to see themselves in the space. And what I was interested in, thinking about this idea of moving in a new space where you don't know what to expect, and how, individual can feel fragile within the space while, they are navigating through the diasporic space. I got opportunity to display the same piece again, going back in 2021 as a public show where I got opportunity to engage with the community from Florida. And it was interesting to see this, the people from the community and even kids. I didn't have pictures of that, but I saw kids navigating through the space, and they were kind of like asking me this question about what is this journey about. So it was powerful to watch the people carefully moving through the delicate installation. Their slow, attentive gesture mirror the unsensitive fragility and vulnerability that often accompany with experience of entering a new environment. In many ways, the audience interaction became part of the work itself, activating the space and completing the piece through their presence and also their experience. In 2023, I made this piece to title "Do You Feel What I Feel?" And it was inspired by a conversation that I had with one of the resident artists from my residency that I had, and we were kind of like sharing our own experience about what it means to live in a different space, and even what it means to navigate different life. It could be identity. You don't have to be immigrant to experience that. And that piece was also inspired by Sarah Ahmed's idea of stranger, which is the concept of stranger being in a new space. And then I started expanding my use of material where I did introduce wood as a medium, not an object. So with this piece, I was really interested in the material itself, thinking about the wood being as a form of stability in my work. And I made this the map, and the maps were a representation of places that I've been to growing up as a young boy. Because when I was growing up, my parents divorced, and after my parents divorced, I have to move from my parents' home and live with a different ethnic group. So in Ghana, we identify people by their ethnic groups, comparing to here that everything is race. So I have to move from my ethnic group, which is being a Khan ethnic group, to the Ewe ethnic group. They speak different language, they eat different food, they have different culture, they live different. And then living with them, we got opportunity to also travel to another West African country called Togo. And one thing that I realized when I was growing up was that when I was living with my parents, I didn't know that I was being identified as an Akan until when I started living with them here. So when I realized that, okay, I'm an Akan, and this is how people identify me. And then when we got opportunity to travel to another West African country, being Togo, I realized that I'm being identified as a Ghanaian. And during the pandemic, when I got opportunity to move here at the airport at GFK, I realized that, okay, this is how I'm being identified, an African, also being labeled by the color of my skin. So that I made that installation in a way together with a video, and that's what I'm going to play to explore what it means to cross border and what it means to navigate through different spaces, and also question the idea of what it means to find a stable home. and what is home. So that was with this exhibition, I had a video, which is a video on the wall displaying, kind of like connecting to the north side and the west side of the gallery. And it was a conversation between myself and my mom, and also with my sibling. And I was just kind of also thinking about how the way I talk to my mom is different from how I talk to my professor or even my friend. And the way I talk to my friends or even colleague or my sibling is different from how I relate to um, other people or even strangers. And it made me think about how identity change between how we relate to people. And I make this installation where the gallery space was, they have this glass. And what I did was I wanted them to block the whole space. And I don't have a picture of that. And what I wanted to do was I realized that during that moment, people were viewing the piece outside the gallery. And that's what I wanted to change because, normally in life, people see people and judge them based on their color or the way they speak, especially myself when I move up here, without getting to know the individual. So what I did was that I blocked that space to force the viewer to get into the space and learn about the work and experience the pieces in 2023. So moving forward, I started thinking about symbol as a material. And this is Sankofa, which is go back for it. And it's a Akan Edinka symbol. And then I started introducing that symbols in my work. And I was thinking about how these symbols are used in Akan community. So in Akan community, we use this symbol, is the Akan Edinka symbol for celebration. You can see them on furnitures, the fabric prints. We use them for proverbs. We use them for conversation in our way. So I started thinking about these symbols. How can I use these symbols in my work? So this is my current show at Alfred Ceramic Arts Museum, titled Ifiankra, inspired by the Akan Indinka symbol. And what I did was that when I picked the symbol and when I make the pieces, what I did was I changed the orientation of the symbol, thinking about the idea of fixed identity and also the diasporic displacement. So my first encounter with the creator, when he came to my studio, he saw the pieces and he said, "What are you making?" Because it wasn't finished. I had the raw clay up there and I started talking about it. And I told him, my process is a journey. It starts off with clay and it grows whilst I'm making. So right now, this is the stage. So when I finished the piece, I called him back for him to look at the pieces. Then he said, "Oh my God, now I can't see the symbols. And I don't know what you're trying to do." But this time around, I started using the wood and I was also thinking about the object itself, which is the benches. And these benches are benches that I use in my home where we use for community. We use it to watch movies. We sit on it. we eat. We use it to play hide and seek, which is game. So there was a lot of nostalgia in this exhibition in my work with title "You Did Not Say Goodbye When You Left Home." And I was just thinking about the Efiankra. Do we really say goodbye when we leave? And it runs through everything that we do in our work. So this is the clear view of what the pieces that I made in my work. And there's this question that I always get. Do you collect these benches? And I said, no, I make them with wood. And what I was interested in is how I age the wood in my work. So in my studio, I become the weather. I try to transform the material, the object, and add different meaning to it in my work. And as part of the series, which is self-care, with this piece, I just wanted to draw from the use of yarn, which is color. Because after my parents divorced, living with different ethnic groups, for them, they use red as a symbol of protection. So in Ghana, living with them, they would tie red cloth with something that they have or any belonging and they will leave it out. And it will stay for so many years and no one will touch it. So using this piece, I was kind of like thinking about this idea of protection and how the yarn was protecting the piece. Because when you look at the piece, the only thing that was holding the whole clay sculpture together is that, which makes it really precarious. So I was also interested in the idea of precarious and how we precariously navigate through new spaces. I also made this to thinking about the idea of protection, which is the piece title Caught in the Web, made in 2025 as part of the solo show, which is the Efiankra solo show. And also explore these pieces. And with this one too, I was really interested in what would be the best way for me to explore the use of fabric in the work. So when you look at the piece, usually I have my fabric pieces on top of the pieces, which is the clay sculpture. But this time around, I decided to put the pieces inside and be curious about what people would think about it. And during the exhibition, I realized that people were curious about the piece because when they see the piece from afar, they think this is glaze until they get close to it to experience the piece. Then I think I was really interested in the idea of surprise and also interested in the idea of looking in that piece, which is titled The Flow of Oil. So through my process too, which is as part of my work, I also explore with found objects. And in Ghana, we have something called the repair, which is the culture of repair. So we repair phones. And growing up, when my parents would buy milk, and what we do is we transform the milk conco into different thing or add different meanings to it, which is the culture of repair. So I also use found object, like I said, drawing inspiration from the Ghanaian culture where broken material are often repurposed. I was interested in the idea of second chance in my work, and I'm going to show different slides of what I made. So back in 2024, I made this piece marrying, this object together with fabric and also with clay. And I was interested in the resilience of migrants in the diaspora and how they are navigating through this space because you never know what they go through in order to do something. So I made this piece to reflect on migrant experience, the resilience of migration, and also immigrants in the diaspora. My work is also inspired by the idea of assembler, thinking about, you know, pioneers like Robert Washington, idea of found objects, also, um, and also interested how we add meanings and also transform objects in our work. So as part of the series, which is this one titled Returning, and with this piece, I wanted to convey the tension between expectation and also legal status in migration, juxtaposing ridges with a ceramic form with soft intertwined fiber, mirroring how migrants navigate complex cultural roots or codes in the diaspora. And one thing I always do, which is especially being having a foundation of ceramics is that sometimes the ideas are best realized through video. So for me, if I have an idea and I want to visually produce that idea, I think about so many things. I don't limit myself to just clay. So I have done so many performances, but this is really new performance that I made last summer, which is also part of the show at Alfred Ceramic Museum. Collaborated with Heather Davis. And I was interested in pulling my hair, using my body, fabric, and clay to, to depict childhood experience. And I'm going to show that video. So the tension and the pain of the act become metaphor for identity, survival, negotiation between new space. Wow, thank you.
At this point, I would like to open the floor up for questions. If you have questions, kindly raise your hand and I will come with the microphone right next to you. And I do hope that we have a lot of questions today. Who would be the first?
About the video, what motivated you to break off your hair like that? Were you like imagining your hair as clay itself?
Great question. I was imagining so many things. Can you hear me? Um, so when I talk to my mom, I want to start from where. So my mom will FaceTime me and she will see my hair and she will tell me, "Oh, you become an American." I was like, "What do you mean? Are you defining my hair by that?" So she would tell me, "By next week, make sure you cut off your hair before you call me." Because like we live together and she always want to make sure that, you cut down your hair and put it down. So I was really kind of like thinking about growing up living with her and how we we tie we wrap this fabric around us. It was more like a nostalgia. And when we're dressing, we put the pomade. So it became more like me defining myself, who am I within this space. Because I felt like when I talk to my mom, she would tell me I'm changing. But when I talk to my colleagues here, they see me to be a Ghanaian. So for me doing that using clay, I was kind of like thinking about this idea of being in between and how can I change myself using clay? Because for me, like I said earlier, I use clay to mold my sense of self within the diaspora. So whilst I was doing that, that was me kind of like trying to creating that tension and the emotion that I'm going through in relation to what it means to be in between. Yeah.
Any questions?
Pleasure to meet you, Eugene.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. It was a really good talk. I've got two questions.
Okay.
When you go back and you're talking particularly about your history and your past with your parents and the divorce, and it sounded like you were doing a lot of moving and changing of places. You said that you were recognized as being part of the Akan people.
Yes.
First question is, what was the relationship of those people to Akans? And then the second question is, how did that make you feel, like knowing that you were being referred to as this other?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
That moment, I have to learn how to speak their language and learn how to eat their food because they eat different food. And whenever I'm talking to them, they see me to be an Akan. But after a year later, because I spent a decade living with these new people after my parent divorced, but I was still kind of like in touch with my mom because she was paying my fees and doing all that. They provided shelter. But when I call my mom, she would tell me, "Oh, you becoming them," because we speak. I was speaking their language, learning how because they were also kind of like they wanted me to speak their language. My mom didn't want me to speak their language, and also when they see me to be an Akan. You're like, no, now you're part of us. So so even that idea of being in between started off growing up, and I always tell people like I became a traveler at the age of 3 after my parent divorce. So it was kind of a mixed feeling that I didn't know where to belong. And I didn't know whom to call, like whom or where to call home. So I would say it was a really tricky situation for me growing up because they're giving you shelter, they like you, they want you to be like them. And then your parents also or your account community see them because like I said, in Ghana we are ethnic groups. Like we speak over 70 languages. We have so many ethnic groups and we all do so many things, different things. So even in marriages, you cannot go over like different ethnic group and start, marry someone from that region where they also don't want to come there. So it was a lot for me at that moment growing up, but I also wanted to be with them in order to get through my education because we were living in that same town and my parents divorced and they all went back and I have to live in the same town in order to complete my education. So I don't know how to put it, but I think it was a lot for me, but I also kind of like learned a lot because before that, honestly, for me, I was like, I don't want to eat these people's food. They're doing different things. I don't want to speak their language. They think about even color in a different way. Like I said, they will put red band on something as a sort of protection where no one can take it. And also, when I went there, I also have to learn how to ride a bicycle because bicycle was kind of a culture for them. Where when I was living with my mom would never allow me to use a bicycle. So it was a great experience. It taught me a lot, and I started appreciating other people's culture and how other people also live. I don't know whether I've been able to answer your question. Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. Yes, Hannah?
Gee,
Yeah.
I'm curious about your pattern choices.
Yeah.
How do you decide, like what motivates the pattern choices? I'll just start there.
Yeah. But for me, I'm really drawn to the history of the material. I think I always choose the history over the pattern in my work. But also, we also read the pattern in so many ways. But I also wanted to have an open conversation where I didn't want to limit my work based on just the pattern. But through the process of selecting the fabric, what I do is because my mom is doing it, she helps or she selects the fabric based on the pattern and also the meaning behind it. And then when the piece get to my studio, which because the fabric travel, which is a history, it cross border, go through immigration process, and get to my studio. And when I'm cutting the fabric, I cut the fabric through and making sure that whilst I'm cutting the fabric, I'm paying attention to the pattern for that. So I make the decision based on cutting, but when I'm applying the fabric, I don't think about the patterns. I consider the history over the patterns.
Okay, another question I want to ask you about is the culture of repair. How expansive is that within the culture,
Yeah.
not just material culture alone?
Yeah. Oh, can you repeat that again?
You were addressing the culture of repair.
Yeah.
Within your lecture, and you were talking about the milk cartons,
Oh,
and
yes.
sort of making the cars,
Yeah.
right? So, the recycling of materials provides creative outlet and agency, question mark, or perhaps, right?
Yeah.
So, when you speak of culture of repair and you show that slide, I can easily understand.
Yeah.
My question is more about how expansive is that culture of repair within the community? Does it happen relationally? Is it only about reusing? Not only, but
Yeah, I think I would say both. Um, both because the culture of repair, which is like giving meaning to different objects, or giving it repurposing a material. And for me, I was just kind of like thinking about this culture where the same way we recycle material or objects in Ghana to when my phone or my laptop, you know, get broken, I don't throw them away. We take them. We have like whole shop that repair um, the, uh, the those equipment. So we have this culture there where we have this shop whenever your phone get damaged, you don't have to throw them away. You have a shop where we have a whole system where people repair them. Or sometimes if it doesn't work, they put them in different use. So there, we have that culture. I don't know whether making sense. But in this work, I was really interested in the repair and also the idea of repurpose or giving, meaning or different purpose to object or rejected objects. Because especially when I moved here, I realized that when people use their couch, they just throw them away because it has no purpose. And when I start thinking about that, I just question myself, where is this material coming from? Who used them? Why is it there? What is it doing? And the value of it. So the idea of the second chance is what I'm interested in my work.
One last question. Okay, two more, and yeah.
Hi, thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
You said earlier when you were talking about the benches, I think, that you were the weather in your studio, and that was such a beautiful and poetic thing to say. And so I was hoping that you would elaborate on that.
Yeah. So I didn't really live with my mom. And usually when I make stuff, she will call me. I was, oh, I've seen this. Did you make it? When did you start making stuff? And usually she will ask me, did you collect them? Because she knows that I'm interested in collecting stuff. And I told her that I made them myself. And even my colleague back in Alfred University, I used to be in Alfred University, and they will come to my studio, see the pieces, and ask me, did you put them outside for you to, to go through the environmental experience and, the natural process? And I was like, I don't have time because I have to make this. But for me in my studio, I'm always about the specificity of what I'm doing in my work. So if I'm welding or becoming a welder, I think about what can I use to work the bench and what is it doing in the work. So what I do is I prepare this material. I use vinegar and start like putting some stuff that are really personal to me from home. And I let it sit for it to save for some time for the vinegar to drain those objects. So for me, when I do that, wedding it is metaphorically trying to transform myself and also my sense of self within a new space. So when I go places and people ask me, did you collect them? I say, no, I did not do that. I become the weather. I'm the weather. And I try to transform them whichever way that I want. And I'm more interested in what materials am I using to transform the benches and what is it doing in the work and why is it important. So it's an ongoing, research that I'm doing, and I'm always curious about what else can I do and what is weather mean and why. So I'm still in my studio figuring it out and asking those questions in my work. Yeah.
Hi, so the talk was really great.
Thank you.
So my question is more on like the diasporic aspect of your work. So with like the current political climate and you know how diasporic communities, immigration, I feel like it's a really important topic to speak on. Do you think that your earlier work to you personally has started to take new meaning as you continue to, make more work? Or do you think it like keeps the same meaning and you just create more work in order to digest like what's currently happening in the world?
Yeah. It's a very tricky situation. And you have no idea how I got here. It's a lot of work, a lot of documentation and paperwork, and you have to go through all that. And usually, when you go on social media, the things that you see is really heartbreaking. I mean, it doesn't affect me, but also I'm part of those people who are going through that. Um, So, and I was talking to this creator about, I have a talk in a conversation with Larry Osei Mason in April 2nd. And we were just talking about the things that we should talk about and how much can we talk about and what should we make, and even the creators or even museums, because you also have to be really mindful of what to show and what to say with your work. So I try to maintain what I'm doing, but I'm also mindful of how much to share in my work. So it's a tricky situation right now, but we are also finding so many ways, especially others, to explore this idea and what is going on, because people need to know what it means to travel. So yeah, we're still doing it and expanding that language and also setting boundaries and know what to say and when to say it in my work. Yeah. So depending on where I go or the place that I find myself in.
Thank you so much, Eugene. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We still have 2 more talks, and this talk would be available on our YouTube channel, Arts and Architecture YouTube channel. So please do follow up. And thank you, and I will see you in 2 weeks.